What's up, Sam? How's it going? How's it going?
Hey man, it's going great, feeling great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I can't complain as always, I say. Sam, as I mentioned to you before, this will be a very interesting video because this will be the first interview that I've done on my YouTube channel where, at least for part of the interview, I am and the person that I'm talking with are speaking in English. So I think this will be super interesting. And I wanted to do this in English because I know we have some people that don't understand Spanish completely. And we're going to speak in Spanish eventually, but your story, your life story in terms of languages and just life in general, I think is super valuable. So thanks for being here. Gracias por estar aquí. And so, in the beginning, right, as I always ask in my interviews with people that speak Spanish, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? Tell us a little bit about your life journey, about your travels, your language learning adventures, everything that has to do with that. If you could just give us a brief synopsis on that.
Yeah, well, first I want to thank you for having me here. As I already told you a little bit off camera, like your channel is an inspiration for so many out
Appreciate it.
there. So yeah, thank you for the work that you've done, and I'm really honored to be part of this right now.
Wow,
Um,
I
yeah, so just
appreciate it.
a little bit of background about myself. My name is Sam. I'm 26 years old, originally born in Los Angeles, California.
Hmm.
But I lived a good amount of my life in a city an hour east of Los Angeles called Fontana, like the
Okay.
suburbs of LA, basically.
Hmm.
Um, but from there, after graduating high school, I've kind of had a life a little bit, a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit
I've
everywhere,
seen. I've
basically.
seen. Hmm.
Yeah. So I went to university in Arizona, went to Arizona State.
Okay.
But in my last semester in university, I had the option to either graduate early or go study abroad. And for
Okay.
me, it was a no-brainer. It was like, I want to go out and have this adventure. And I had a cousin that had did study abroad.
Hmm.
When I first came into university, she was already like a few years in, and she just
Hmm.
studied abroad in London. I just remember like being so fascinated by her stories and stuff. So I was
Hmm.
like, if I had the opportunity to do this, like I'm definitely gonna
Right.
go for it.
Hmm.
So yeah, ended up doing study abroad in Barcelona. Uh,
Wow.
spring of 2017 it was, and
Hmm.
so that was a really really life changing experience for me. Because up to that point, I had only been outside of the U.S. I believe once, and that was for a spring break trip to Mexico.
Okay.
But besides that, I never left the country.
Hmm.
And so for me, it was like my first time really having this exposure to just
Yeah.
a big, so many different cultures, so many different
Hmm.
backgrounds, people, having the ability to like travel to many different countries in such a short time
Right.
period. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like that whole thing.
Yeah.
And so that really sparked, it opened up something in me that I didn't even know was there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I always kind of
Hmm.
a social, outgoing person, you could say.
Hmm. Hmm.
I definitely like took it to a whole other level. So
Hmm.
after completing that semester in Barcelona, I ended up coming back to Arizona.
Hmm.
I majored in finance, so I was doing finance work at the time for a
Hmm.
company in Arizona.
Hmm.
Uh, but as you could imagine, like I had just did about 4 months of living in
Right.
Barcelona and traveling throughout Europe, and I came back to the U.S. and was working a corporate job, like
Right. Right. Right.
typical
Yeah.
like
The rat race. Right.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And so I just knew like a few months in, like I don't think this is for me, and
Right.
nothing against it either, nothing against the
No. Right.
people that are living that. But
Hmm.
I just felt for myself personally, like there's something else out there that I want to go for. And
Hmm.
during that time in Barcelona, I started learning Spanish and everything.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
also the conflict for me was like, oh, I want to continue to improve my Spanish. I want to live in a Spanish speaking country, ideally, to
Hmm.
have that
Hmm.
experience. So then started to search to try to make that dream a reality. And so
Hmm.
originally I was trying to go back to Spain,
Okay.
and there was like one job opportunity that I had been applying for, but it didn't work out.
Hmm.
But then ended up hearing from a friend about a job opportunity in Santiago, Chile,
Oh wow.
and yeah, at the time I didn't know. To be honest, didn't really know anything about
Right.
Chile. I obviously, I knew the name and everything, and it
Hmm.
was located on the map, but
Hmm.
outside of that, I didn't know too much. But
Hmm.
it ticked all my boxes. It was Spanish speaking country.
Yep.
And it was
Yep.
outside the US.
Yep. Yep.
Like, let's
Let's
go for
go.
it. Literally, it was
Right.
that simple for me. So then I ended up
Hmm.
applying for the role, interviewed, and it was like November, like mid-November or so.
Hmm.
Applied and interviewed for the role. And by New Year's of the following year, so within like a month and a half, I was flying to Santiago.
Wow.
Took my life from Arizona and moved to Santiago.
Was that a finance position or was it different? Okay.
It was also a finance position. Yeah,
Okay.
like an international education company called the
Got it.
Group. And
Okay.
so yeah, they had a role open. They happened to be like finance position that like literally aligned with the experience and skills that I had at that point.
Hmm.
I was like, oh, this is meant
Wow.
to be, you know.
Right, right, right.
So yeah, that was January 2018 that I had moved down there,
Hmm.
and ultimately stayed in Santiago, Chile for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Uh, but then after that, I kind of felt like, all right, I would like to come back to the States. So I ended up making a decision to move to New York City because
Hmm.
I had like my closest friends at the time were living there in New York City. I always felt like it'd be a fun city to live in, in
Hmm.
cities. And so, yeah, ended up moving down there. And to be honest, I moved out there without having a job secured at the time.
Oh,
Just
wow.
like I'm just gonna figure it out, make it.
Right.
And that ended up happening. Ended up getting a job there too.
Hmm.
Had a great time in New York City and everything. But then now fast forward to where I'm at right now. I'm currently living in the Netherlands, and
Wow.
like the fact that my girlfriend, she's actually Dutch, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, ultimately we were trying to figure out, okay, is he gonna come here? Am I gonna go there? But yeah, through a series of conversations, everything figured that the best thing to do would be for me to try to move to the Netherlands and end up getting a job offer that gave me a visa to move
Wow.
here. So
Wow. Wow.
for that, and yeah, man, so it's really
It's a lot. And look, I
but I
still have a couple of questions in that story. I have a couple of questions for you. So, first off, how was the experience in Chile in multiple parts? One, just the day-to-day life experience, culture, things that you liked, and honestly, things that you didn't like. In terms of the language, did you see a major improvement in your Spanish? Did you like what was that experience like? So again, just the personal experiences with the culture, things that you liked and didn't like, and then specifically with Spanish, how was that experience?
Yeah, so for me in Chile, first of all, it was a really interesting experience because the company I was working for was it was like a startup company, but it was
Mhm.
a company that was originally, how would I say it? Like the owners were from the UK, but they were living in Chile, but like everyone
Mhm.
that was working for this company in Santiago were like either from the US or
Oh,
from
I see.
some country within Europe, or you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
uh, at least in the Santiago office. But we also had locations in different places all over the world. So, for example, we had an office in Colombia that was all
Okay.
pretty much like mainly Colombians that were working there.
Mhm.
But basically, my point I was trying to make about the Santiago experience is that it was really like an expat community that I was surrounded by, and like my day to day in terms of work.
Mhm.
But I'm the kind of person that likes to like go out there and put myself in situations
Right.
like I'm like connecting with like the locals. So
Mhm.
I find myself just wandering the streets and just trying
Right.
to
Right.
strangers,
Mhm.
and that in itself too was another way for me to like better my Spanish, to
Right.
practice my but also like in Chile in apartments usually have someone at the front that's like the security
Mhm.
of like the apartment building, knowing like they just
Mhm.
like make sure everything's okay. And I would always like befriend those people and like always when I come down like talk with them, and they're
Right.
always nice to me, super friendly. Or even at
Mhm.
the work office, like connecting with those people as well. Um yeah, so in terms of like the people in Chile there, I had like a really great experience. Everyone was super kind to me, especially if you're like trying to speak Spanish and trying to like integrate into the culture.
Mhm.
Um, they're really feeling that way. The nightlife was really fun too.
Mhm.
I know you did some travel throughout South America, so you probably
Right.
know that
Yeah.
probably stop until like
For
the next
sure.
day.
For sure. For
So
sure.
that,
For
that
sure.
was cool. That was cool. And then yeah, also having the ability to travel to other like places in South America. Although to be honest, I didn't do too much traveling.
Mhm.
South America, which is like I hate to use the word regret, but that's definitely one of the things that I wish I could have
Mhm.
uh taken more advantage of during my time there.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, yeah, no, it was a really really great experience. I hope I'm answering your
No, you
question.
are perfectly. Did you have any negative experiences though at all? And the only reason I ask that is because you hear good. For example, when I went to Peru, they're biased a little bit because there's a conflict there. They were saying, sometimes the Chilenos are not as nice as the Peruanos, so they're not as nice as other parts of South America. Obviously, you said you didn't go to other parts, but you said they were pretty nice. But did you have any negative experiences? And I also asked specifically about the language because Chilean Spanish has the reputation of being the most difficult to understand. So I was curious to know how you handled your defended yourself with the language there.
Yeah, to be honest, like, and I'm not just saying it's just cause, but when I travel to a new country, like,
Hmm.
it's hard for me really to like have an idea of what negative things are there because I really try to just be open to like
Mm,
whatever it is. You know what
good
I
point.
mean?
Good
Like
point. Yeah.
just like this is the culture here, this is the vibe here, this is how people operate, and it's not to say whether it's good or bad. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
nonetheless, obviously there are things that occur. and I'm human, so yeah, you naturally does sometimes. And
Hmm.
I know one experience that comes to mind, and I feel pretty confident about this.
Hmm.
Where there was one time, I had been waiting outside of a nightclub, and
Hmm.
we're trying to like flag down the taxi, and the taxi just you definitely got the vibe was ignoring me, and
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
it was like
Exactly.
how they're ignoring.
I know exactly why they're ignoring you.
And the thing
Right.
too, like within Chile, there were a lot of Haitian people that lived
Oh.
there. And at least from how my understanding of what I saw and experienced, like they're not
Hmm.
really treated the best,
I
and
see.
they're definitely like seen a certain way.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that was a conflict always for me during that time. Actually, to kind of this brings out a negative thing I felt during that
Hmm.
time. That like I hated that once I started talking or once people heard me, it's like, oh, you're an American, so like you're
You're different. You're
like
not like them.
different,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
I remember vividly like having a conversation one time with a Chilean person out there, like, yo, I don't want people to see me different. Like, yo, if you
Right.
see people a certain way, like feel the same way about me. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So
Right.
that was my vibe. But yeah, that was definitely like I would say now that I think about like a negative thing was like kind of seeing like the treatment and the view of like how Haitian people had it
Hmm.
there. Um I don't want to say like they were like outcasts in society or something like that. Like I didn't think
Hmm.
that level, but you definitely noticed like
Hmm.
the vibe, with certain
Hmm.
no.
Okay. Okay. Got you. And in terms of, well, going on, I'm thinking in Spanish, thinking in Spanish, but going to the next question. Sorry, my brain is literally in Spanish. Sorry. But going to the next question.
Uh,
What motivated you to start learning Spanish? Was it your trip to Barcelona, the study abroad program? Had you been learning Spanish before that? Knowing that you had these intentions before, like, did you start learning Spanish literally when you got to Spain? How was that experience learning Spanish? How did you start off? What
yeah,
motivated you in the beginning?
great question. It's funny because I was
Hmm.
watching one of your videos. I
Hmm.
forget the guy's name, but it's someone that relocated to Colombia from LA. It's Asian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
West. Uh-huh.
yeah, and so his answer was really similar to like exactly like how I feel about it. So being
Hmm.
from Los Angeles, just being from California in general, but for sure Southern California, like
Hmm.
you're surrounded by like Latino culture
Hmm.
heavily. There's a lot of Latino influence throughout a lot of things within Southern California. So I
Hmm.
think it was always like a part of me in some way.
Hmm.
You just
Hmm.
you just kind of grow up knowing, like everyone grows up knowing just the basics, like hola, cómo estás, uno, dos, tres. You know what I mean? Like those
Hmm.
are
Hmm. Hmm.
always. So I feel like it was definitely like this thing that was inside that was just waiting to
Hmm.
come.
Hmm.
I remember in high school, I don't know how they had it in your school system, but we had to choose a language to
Right. Same.
through our high school. And I remember thinking like, oh, I'm not gonna do Spanish because everybody's doing Spanish. So I chose to do Latin,
Oh
which
wow.
I was
Right.
like that at all. But I
Right.
was like, I want to be different, so I chose to do
Hmm.
Latin.
Hmm.
But then fast forward to when I was in college, I started having, and I don't remember exactly why, but I started having like that desire again to learn Spanish.
Hmm.
Uh, but I remember I would think to myself, like, come on, learn another language. Like, there's no way. Like, I
Right.
struggle.
Right.
I was like, there's no way I'm gonna learn a whole set of words in another
Right.
language. You know what I mean?
Right. Hmm.
Uh, but then I ended up, like I said, making that decision to do study abroad in Barcelona.
Hmm.
And so from there, I was thinking like, okay, maybe it would make sense for me to like know a little bit before I go, and maybe
Hmm.
it's time for me like it almost like forces me now to like
Right.
try to learn Spanish.
Right.
So I first started doing like a group lesson
Hmm.
for about a month or so before I went to Barcelona, but it was really just like the basics,
Hmm.
like just introducing yourself and asking about people's day or talk about the weather,
Hmm.
stuff like that. But I pretty much still arrived to Barcelona without knowing any Spanish. And then I remember
Wow.
I had this really, really awkward situation where I chose to do a homestay in Barcelona instead of
Okay.
doing like the typical like student housing, whatever the case may be.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I just felt like this experience would be a lot more rich if I'm, living with someone from the country and really getting
Hmm.
a vibe of the culture. And
Hmm.
so my first day there, the lady I was staying with, she came to pick me up and she didn't speak like a lick of English. So I remember we were like in the van back
Oh my
there,
god.
and I was like trying to piece together the little Spanish that I did
Right.
know. But
Right.
I was like mixing up words and
Right.
making
Right.
things that made
Conjugations all off probably.
yeah,
Right.
everything was terrible.
Hmm.
But something happened actually with my relationship with her that drove me to like really really want to learn Spanish during that time.
Hmm.
And the fact that I had a roommate
Mhm.
with at her in her apartment,
Mhm.
and spoke a higher level of Spanish than I did. And
Mm.
time when she would want to like communicate something with me, she would like say it to him and then to have him say to me.
Uh-huh.
I'm like really stubborn. I'm like, no, like
Right.
this
Right.
this
Right.
like I'm gonna learn enough to where like you're gonna speak,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And I also
Mhm.
noticed a little bit of friction in our relationship that I felt was like caused by the
Good
lack of
point.
the ability to communicate, you know.
Mhm.
So I had classes, I believe, like uh somewhere between 2 to 4 times a week. I forget the exact number, but
Mhm.
I had Spanish classes quite frequently, like during the week while I was there, and
Mhm.
really made it a point to just go really, really hard in my classes and like really like focus and you know
Mhm.
take whatever I was learning in class and go out and apply it right away in the streets. You know, go out and speak to strangers. Like get yourself lost and not use Google Maps. Like ask for directions and be. You know what I mean? Just like really put yourself
Mhm.
in real situations.
Mhm.
So, like that's something that really helped. Like what's the word I'm looking for? Like speed up the process and
I see.
help you stick a lot more. And by the end of my 4 months there in Barcelona, I was able to
What?
communicate with her, and it wasn't perfect.
Wow.
It was
Right, but still, that's impressive.
I was able to speak to her. Yeah, and it's really cool because now I visited 2 times since then. So I still
Mhm.
throughout 2017. I went back to Barcelona in 2018, and I was
Mhm.
back to Barcelona just a couple of months last year in December. And each time I
Mhm.
visited her, when I went back and like I would talk to her in Spanish, and she'd be like, "Oh my
Shot.
God, like what?
Right, 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 right.
Spanish is good." Yeah,
Mhm.
and there's still so much I need to learn about Spanish.
Mhm.
Because for me, I've noticed that with language learning, like I get really easily, I would say, like, I get quickly to like a level where like, I can communicate and like
Mhm.
express my point, but like crossing over to like that native level, or like really sounding like
Mhm.
you mastered all like the grammar, all that kind of stuff. Like I haven't gotten to that point, so
Mhm.
that's a point for myself of like where I want to perhaps improve in the future. But for now, like just being able to communicate is enough for me.
Right, and I will say, and they're gonna see in like a few seconds, but you are being very humble. You speak Spanish very well, very well. So much so that I think it's a perfect time for us to transition into Spanish. That's okay with you. I have to kind of change my brain a little bit and pause a
Yeah,
little bit. Okay, okay, pero
okay, está bien, pero a veces quizás tengo que preguntarte, repetirlo, quizás tengo que decirlo en inglés, entonces si
no,
eso
está bien,
es,
está bien,
ah,
está
sí,
bien, está bien. Mira, todos estamos en nuestros propios procesos, ¿no?
sí,
Pero, Sam, no te avisé, pero, me gustaría saber de tus experiencias allí en España, porque España para mí es el próximo destino quizás que quiero visitar, pero obviamente es muy lejos y no conozco mucho de España. He escuchado cosas buenas y cosas malas, entonces para ti obviamente te gustaba o te gusta todavía porque viajaste ahí muchas veces. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que nos puedes decir de España, tu experiencia viviendo ahí? Perdón, sí, viviste ahí, viviendo ahí, estando ahí por unos paseos, ¿cómo te fue?
listo. Pues la verdad, siempre digo que España es como un país segundo, que tal vez como pues seguir un perfecto
Wow.
país, como,
Ujú,
no sé, esto yo creo que tiene algo con, estaba allí durante study abroad, ¿sabes? Y
ujú,
yo tenía como mucho tiempo libre,
ujú,
me siento como algo especial de este país.
ujú,
Bueno, pues conozco Barcelona y también
ujú.
Madrid, pero no todo de España, entonces puedo
Ujú.
hablar más de Barcelona más que nada.
Okay.
En Barcelona yo diría, si hay una ciudad perfecta, yo
Wow.
diría que es Barcelona.
Perfecto.
La
Wow.
verdad, es todo. Tiene la playa, tiene montañas,
Ujú,
comida buena, tiene como mucha gente de todo el mundo, porque claro, tienes gente de todos los países en Europa que están viviendo allí, pero también gente de todo el mundo quiere venir
ujú,
a Barcelona.
ujú.
Entonces, y también como la vida nocturnal,
Nocturna, nocturna, nocturna.
nocturna, eso,
Ujú,
es muy chévere.
ujú.
No sé, cada vez que yo voy ahí me siento muy feliz, me siento
Okay,
como tiene todo, la verdad.
okay. ¿Y notaste algunas similitudes entre la cultura española y la cultura chilena? Porque yo, de lo que he escuchado, hay muchas cosas que todavía se quedan en las culturas latinas, en Sudamérica, en Centroamérica, que tienen un origen en España, obviamente, ¿no? Como somos acá en Estados Unidos, tenemos cosas culturales que vinieron de Inglaterra. Entonces, ¿notaste algunas cosas parecidas cuando viajaste a Chile y a España o se ven completamente diferentes?
Sí, hay similares, por ejemplo, yo diría como la arquitectura, es,
Ajá, ajá.
no quiero decir lo mismo, pero hay similares, ¿sabes?
Ujú, ujú,
Pues eso, ¿qué más? Pues en Chile también tienes la playa, en España
ujú,
tienes la playa, yo diría como la onda acerca de la playa es,
ujú,
no quiero decir lo mismo, pero hay algo similar.
ujú.
También la gente en España, a mí, en mi opinión, ellos son un poco más, eh, como te digo, like a little more vibrant,
Ah, ajá,
¿sabes?
ajá,
En mi
ajá.
opinión,
Ujú,
para un tú tienes eso también. Y ellos los dos le, le gustan
ujú,
la fiesta y todo eso. Entonces, sí, hay similares, pero aún hay diferencias también, ¿sabes?
ujú.
Por ejemplo, España es más caro y también
Ah,
España
buen
tiene
punto.
más influencia de toda Europa.
Ujú,
Eh, tú tienes más como el turismo es diferente. Por ejemplo, el
ujú,
turismo, claro, en Chile tú tienes más gente de Sudamérica y
ujú,
eso, pero en España tienes más gente de Europa.
ujú.
Eh, ¿Qué más? ¿Qué más? ¿Qué más? Sí, eso es difícil
Okay,
decir, pero sí, hay similares.
okay,
Sí.
okay. Y un tema que siempre me gusta tocar es la experiencia. Por ejemplo, cuando hablo con extranjeros que han viajado o que han visitado, han conocido Estados Unidos, me encanta preguntarles de sus experiencias, de lo que vieron que era bueno, que era malo y todo eso. Tú y yo somos paisanos de los Estados Unidos, entonces, pero conoces muchos países, tanto que vivías, perdón, en otros países. Entonces, con la experiencia que te tuviste y que tienes todavía. Y ya, por eso, con eso, ¿qué es lo que nos puedes decir de lo que has aprendido de nuestro país, Estados Unidos? No sé si me entiendes, como que las cosas buenas y las cosas malas, si te ves viviendo en el extranjero para siempre o te ves volviendo a Estados Unidos, las ventajas, las desventajas de vivir en nuestro país, de salir de nuestro país, porque la gran cosa para mí es que sí, me encantaría tener la experiencia de vivir en otro país y antes se puede ver en mi canal la progresión, ¿no? Al inicio solamente era el idioma, después era la cultura, después se volvió en algo de una mudanza mía, después pensé casi en vender mi casa y ahora estoy volviendo a una normalidad que es un poco más balanceada, que es como, ok, sí quiero tener esa experiencia, pero a la vez quiero mantener mis relaciones con mis familiares, con mis amigos, con mi círculo social. Obviamente hay problemas acá, pero es un balance. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que nos puedes decir de la experiencia en Estados Unidos, de tu perspectiva? Si te ves viviendo en Estados Unidos, en otro país, ¿cómo lo ves?
Bueno, pues, buena pregunta.
Ajá.
La primera cosa que yo diría es que se nota más cómo te importa en los Estados tu trabajo, ¿sabes? Y ya es
Ujú,
algo de que hablamos en los Estados
ujú,
Unidos, pero creo que se nota más
ujú,
cuando tú estás viendo afuera, ¿sabes?
ujú,
Yo diría en todos los países que he vivido, por ejemplo, en España, aquí en Holanda, también en Chile, siempre yo tenía más el sentido o pues el sentimiento que ya estoy disfrutando la vida más.
más.
Como ya
Ujú,
me estoy enfocando como qué es lo que quiero hacer. No estoy pensando siempre en, tengo ese trabajo, tengo que hacer eso,
ujú,
eso, eso. Es
ujú.
como, puedo disfrutar la vida, ¿me entiendes?
Sí, sí, entiendo.
Puedo viajar, puedo tomar días libres del trabajo sin sentir como mal, ¿me entiendes?
Ujú,
Como
ujú,
todo es un gran cambio.
ujú,
Pero bueno, también con eso, obviamente no todo es positivo.
ujú,
La más fuerte para mí es estar lejos de mi familia, lejos
ujú,
de mi familia.
ujú,
Eh, Porque yo soy un hombre de familia, ¿sabes? Como mi
ujú, sí.
mamá, mi padre, pues mi papá, mis
Ujú,
hermanos,
ujú,
me importan todos, ¿sabes?
ujú, ujú,
Eh, Eso es difícil, pero también con la tecnología que tenemos ahora, con FaceTime y con group chat y todo,
ujú,
aún me siento un poco que estoy ahí con ellos, ¿sabes? Entonces eso es
Ujú,
lo más fácil.
ujú,
Yo diría que the pro de estar
ujú,
afuera
ujú,
outweighs the con. You know what I
ujú,
mean? De
ujú,
uh, estar, vivir afuera, yo diría.
ujú, ujú,
Um, entonces, sí. Y también tú puedes aprender muchísimo de tú mismo si tú estás viviendo afuera de tu país, porque ya todo es diferente, ¿sabes? Entonces, tienes que pensar en quién eres, ¿me entiendes?
ujú,
Como
ujú,
cómo puedes navegar esa situación, porque si tú
ujú.
estás ahí, ya sabes todo, ya
Eso.
tú puedes ir, tú puedes vas con tu día sin
Ujú,
pensar, ¿sí? ¿Me
eso.
entiendes? Pero
Ujú,
aquí, por ejemplo, en Holanda, tengo que pensar todo, como, oye, tengo que ver cómo puedo coger el tren,
ujú,
o tengo que dar para comida, o,
ujú.
¿sabes? Como,
Sí,
cómo funcionan las cosas con el gobierno, todo eso, tienes que pensar en todo. Pero eso es lo
ujú,
que me encanta, porque es
sí,
como hace la vida más interesante, ¿sabes? Y
sí.
es como sabor.
Ujú, no, entiendo, entiendo.
Sí.
Entonces, ¿cuál tipo de persona, qué tipo, perdón, de personas dirías le gustaría vivir en el extranjero y qué tipo de personas dirías que no? Como, ok, si eres así, es mejor que se quedes, o sea, se te quedes, perdón.
Sí, sí, tú tienes que ser alguien que te gusta la aventura. Tú tienes que
Ujú,
ser alguien que, pues bueno, para alguien que quiere tener esa experiencia, ¿sí?
ujú,
Tú tienes que ser alguien que te gusta la aventura.
ujú.
O también te gusta, o pues, better said,
Mejor dicho. Ujú.
mejor dicho, alguien que puede funcionar con, like, chaos, ¿sabes?
Mm, ujú, ujú, ujú.
Como-
Desorden, desorden, desorden.
eso,
Ujú,
como no todo tiene que estar perfecto,
ujú,
porque eso no va a ser así. Vas a tener
ujú,
problemas, vas a tener momentos cuando tú estás pensando, oye, ¿por qué esto haciendo esto? Vas a
ujú,
extrañar todo, ¿sabes? Eso vas a
ujú,
aprender las cosas, pero si tú eres alguien que te gusta eso, te gusta tener un poco
ujú,
actividad, diría,
ujú, ujú, ujú.
tu
Ese
vida.
movimiento. Ujú.
Sí, eso está bien, está bien. Ya, sí, eso.
Otra pregunta, yo sé que estoy tirándote muchas preguntas, pero ¿tú prefieres, porque hay un movimiento, he escuchado un movimiento del mundo de los viajeros que es slow travel, viajas lento, no sé, y el tipo de turismo que antes todo el mundo hacía, que era, o sea, yo llego a Barcelona y en 3 días yo estaré en Londres y en 3 días estaré en Bulgaria, así, ¿no? Viajando rápido, rápido, conociendo todo, llegando a los destinos muy rápido. Entonces, ¿preferías esa forma de viajar o al menos he notado en tu vida que te quedas en un sitio por un poco, por un rato, para ver si te gusta, para realmente meterte en la cultura y en la ciudad? Entonces, ¿cuál tipo de viajes prefieres?
A mí me gusta más quedarme un poco más largo en un
Okay.
país, pues, en una ciudad, lo que sea, ¿sabes?
Ujú,
Porque, como tú has dicho, me gusta como ponerme en la cultura,
ujú,
me gusta sentir un poco cómo va en ese país, ¿sabes? Me gusta aprender algo y me siento como si tú estás solo pasando por un país o una
ujú,
ciudad por unos días, como
ujú,
voy a grabar esta foto, voy a subirlo en Instagram y me voy, ¿sabes? No,
ujú, sí,
no quiero eso, es como puedo hacer eso por Google Search y
exacto, buen punto,
¿sabes?
sí.
Eh, sí, me gusta como tomar mi tiempo en un lugar.
Ujú,
Sí, yo diría eso es mejor. Pero si a alguien le gusta más solamente unos días, bueno, puede
ujú,
ser. Pero para mí, yo prefiero quedarme un poco más largo en un
ok,
lugar. Sí.
ok, perfecto. Y la última pregunta en español y después podemos volver a inglés para terminar el video. Tu experiencia en Holanda, ¿cómo te ha ido? ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo te gusta ahí? Explícame todo eso.
Sí, bien, pues estoy teniendo un buen tiempo aquí.
Ujú,
Como he dicho más para mi novia, ella es holandesa, entonces
ujú,
eso ayuda un poco más porque tengo su familia, entonces no es solamente estoy aquí con mí mismo.
ujú, ujú.
Pero si llegué aquí sin conocer o sin conocer a nadie, o
Ujú,
no,
perfecto, perfecto.
sin
Conocer
conocer,
a nadie. Ujú.
Sí, aún sería bien porque, no sé, en Holanda, pues, una cosa, tú estás conectado con muchos países de Europa muy fácil. Tú puedes coger un tren a Paris en como
Mhm.
2 horas, o puedes
Wow.
coger un vuelo a Londres en 45 minutos, ¿sabes?
Wow. Wow.
O a Roma, lo que sea.
Mhm.
Es muy
Mhm.
y también barato, entonces eso me
Mhm.
encanta. ¿Qué más? Como, como de, como te digo, todo aquí es en orden, like everything like ordered,
Mhm.
like
Mhm. Organizado, todo es organizado.
organizado, sí, como
Mhm.
todo funciona,
Ah.
en mi opinión, al menos, en mi opinión. Eh,
Mhm.
lo hace la vida más fácil, yo diría, como no me
Mhm.
muchos like bumps in the road,
Mhm.
todo es muy tranquilo, como oye, el
Mhm.
tren dice que va a llegar a ese tiempo, normalmente va a llegar en ese tiempo, o
Mhm.
si tengo que hacer algo con el gobierno, por ejemplo, cosas con mi visa, todo
Mhm.
fue muy fácil, ¿sabes? Como todo está
Mhm.
organizado, así. Por
Mhm.
ejemplo, my taxes, acabo de hacer my tax return here, la verdad,
Impuestos.
todo, mis impuestos,
Mhm.
todo tenía que, like, log in,
Ajá.
y todo
Mhm.
estaba ya ahí. Solamente tengo que confirmar si está bien o no, ¿sabes?
Mhm.
Pero la información toda ya estaba ahí. Es
Mhm.
como, me encanta, me encanta.
Okay.
También la gente aquí es muy amable, yo diría. Pero una cosa es, normalmente dicen que gente de Holanda son, pues, es un poco más, no quiero decir cerrados, pero quizás un poco más difícil, sabes, como encontrar un grupo para ti aquí, porque normalmente se crece pues, en tu barrio y conocen a
Ah.
desde siempre, es como, ya tengo mi grupo.
Ah.
Entonces,
Mhm.
eso, si tú vienes aquí, quizás poco difícil conocer a gente,
Mhm.
pero yo no he tenido ese problema, pero
Porque ya tienes tu novia.
eres
Mhm.
parecer, sí, exactamente, eso ayuda. Pero también yo soy la tipo de persona que si voy a irme a un país o un lugar, voy a
Mhm.
intentar encontrar gente, ¿me entiendes? Como voy a
Ah.
intentar hacer cosas, por ejemplo, estoy seguro que tú conoces la app Meetup.
Sí, 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 que lo conozco, sí. Mhm.
Justo eso, siempre, si estoy en un país nuevo y lo he
Mhm.
hecho lo mismo aquí, como irme a
Mhm.
un para conocer a gente, ¿sabes? Hacer
Mhm.
actividades y así tú vas a conocer people.
Okay, personas, sí, okay, okay. Volviendo, cambiando nuestras mentes a inglés de nuevo, okay. And so, a couple more questions. One, do you see yourself living outside of the United States for the rest of your life, or are you even that kind of person? Because I know there's some people who are like, I don't think like that. I just go where life kind of takes me. Of course, I plan my life, but I just kind of go what calls me. Or do you know for a fact, like, I love my country that I was born in, but I don't see myself living there. Maybe you don't align with the values or something like that.
I would definitely say it's a former of
Okay, okay.
what you said. Like
Right.
it's really hard for me to be like, okay, yeah, hey Mike, in 10 years I'm gonna be here, or like, yeah, I know for
Mhm,
sure. Now I'm really, man, just enjoying life for what it brings me today, and that's possible trying to stay in the present, and
mhm.
like I've been really blessed so far with what has come my way in life, and like having
Yeah,
this mentality. And I recognize a lot of stuff happens in life that you don't have any control over.
very
So
true.
I almost, speaking for myself, I almost feel like, I don't say arrogant per se, but
I know
like
exactly
foolish.
what you're mhm,
You know
I
what
know
I mean?
exactly what you're describing, exactly what you're describing, mhm,
To feel like I can like say so clearly, okay, this is where I'm gonna be at. So right
mhm.
now, man, I'm just trying to like as best as possible. Yeah, like I said, enjoy my time here and make the most of the experience and everything. And yeah, we'll see what the next step leads to. But yeah, for now, that's in my
Okay,
head that
okay, perfect. What advice would you give to maybe I'm using this as an example just so we can have someone in mind, but maybe a 17-year-old right now that's about to graduate high school that is looking to mimic what you did with your life. They look at your life experience and your life and they're like, I want to do that. I don't want to sit in an office in a cubicle with a suit and tie and do that for the next 30 years. What would you say to somebody who wants to follow your steps, or even someone that is living the life that I just described but wants to get out of it like you did? You realized that early, but maybe it took them 5 years to get all the trinkets and get all the American dream out of their system, and now they want to do something like you've done. What are some of the practical steps that someone could take to follow your path?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is, and this is something that I don't even know how like my mind was on this, but like
Hmm.
I feel grateful that I had this mindset. It was basically like living life to where you're writing your own rules, you know? Like we grow
Hmm.
up pretty much indoctrinated with a certain way of like this is
Hmm.
how life is to go. And at least in the US, the example is you go to college, you get your degree, you know, like you know at 18 what you want to do for the rest of life.
Exactly. How crazy is that? No.
And yeah,
All right.
and then you have that job, and then you hopefully do successful in that job and then retire and die. You know, like
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
just being honest. You
Exactly.
know,
No, that's the truth.
yeah. And I think for me, like early on, I had this mindset of like I'm gonna live life and write it to my own rules. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
write my book the way I want to. And
Hmm.
obviously that wasn't always the case. Like obviously you have times where like that pressure sinks in a little bit.
Hmm.
But I feel like whenever it came down to like big life decisions,
Hmm.
that's the mindset that I had. So first of all, like deciding to go to University of Arizona, I was like, yeah, I could stay local and like, you know, stay in my environment, stay in like my community that I grew up in, knew, but
Hmm.
like no, I'm gonna go break out a little bit and like see something
Right.
different. And then from there, like going to make the decision to go to Barcelona, it was like, yeah, why not like go to this
Right.
other country? Why not get a passport right now and like try to learn another,
Hmm.
you know, like
Right.
that's what I told me. I'm gonna go for it. And then
Hmm.
one of the biggest decisions, like making a decision to leave my corporate job after I graduated and go to like Chile, making like probably half the money I was making.
Hmm.
But at that time, I was like, yeah, I can have all the money in the world, but I don't care. Like I'd rather, you know, follow this experience that I feel is like really like on my heart to go for. And at the end of the day, like I'm the one that has to like live my life and my life
Exactly.
decisions. So like if what I feel right now is gonna make me happy is going to Chile for a year and a half and learning Spanish and meeting people from all over the world and you know getting this experience and like I'm gonna go for it. And you're like obviously looking back, I have no regrets about that. I'm happy I
Honestly,
did.
yeah. And Sam, you say that so casually, but that's super profound. Like to have the, it seems to someone that is like in maybe a previous generation or someone that has a more strict mindset that may have seemed like an immature decision, but it was actually the most mature decision that you could have made because you were thinking about in the long term what will I be happier with sticking here, making more money, but disliking what I'm doing or having that experience. Another thing I'd like to mention is that I wanted you to explain that to us because what I find is like a lot of extremes. I see people that don't travel at all and don't, just sticking to the typical way of life that we have here that you described. And then other people that do the complete opposite. And they're like, I'm going to take $2,000 and just go travel the world. And then they're struggling for the next 15 years. And so I think you found a nice little balance of using your skill set to make money, even, make money and progressively take care of yourself and still do the things that you need to do, but still get that life experience. So that's why I think the value is with you. It's not just like just throw everything away and go move to like the jungle in Brazil and like no. I still took care of my business, but I used my skill set to make sure that I'm enjoying my life internationally also. So I think that's a very good point.
I know it's actually crazy you say that because I really like point that out, but that definitely was the mindset. It's like I'm gonna follow my heart, but like I want to still be strategic about it. You know, like
Exactly. Exactly.
like just tripping and like just throw everything away. Like
Exactly.
you gotta be realistic at the same time too. You know,
Hmm.
honest about what can occur if you take a certain amount of risk. You know, like
Right.
in the world of finance, like more risk, more return, but you
Hmm.
have to be aware of like what's your risk.
Hmm.
You know, how
Yep.
far do you want to go?
Exactly.
Because also like more risk and more chance of like losing it all. You know, so
Hmm.
you got to
Hmm.
figure out that balance for yourself, uh,
Hmm.
for sure. But yeah, no, that's crazy. You pointed that out.
Okay. I know I keep saying a couple more questions, and I know a lot of these questions I
And
hadn't
then
mentioned to
ask
you before,
whatever, man. I'm
but
free.
I'm super interested here. So, going back to Spanish a little bit, because I know some people will be here like, can you help? Because you lied to us. You lied to us, Sam. You told us you don't speak Spanish well. You speak Spanish very well. Very well. I didn't even catch any mistakes at all. So, with that said, what was the hardest aspect of learning Spanish for you? The most difficult? If it can be a grammar thing, it could be a certain skill like listening, speaking, writing. What was the hardest thing for you, and how did you overcome that?
Más difícil, yo diría, cuando yo en los
In English, perdón, in
oh,
English.
sorry.
Because some people, for the beginners, let's say, for the
Yeah,
beginners
yeah.
that are, because I'm noticing a lot more beginners are finding my channel, so I want them to be able to pick your brain on this in English. Hmm.
So I think for me, and I'm happy I had the experience to both. What I'm about to say.
Hmm.
When I lived in Spain, as I told you earlier, like being like in the country and like
Hmm.
having like those lessons and like having the ability to like right after like Spanish class, go out and talk to people in the street and like put that in practice, like really accelerated, I feel,
Mm-hmm.
my learning journey, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I noticed right away when I went back to the US and was living in Arizona, and even still I'm fortunate enough like to be, if you're in Arizona, California, it's like a lot of Spanish speakers, but
Mm-hmm.
in general in the US, so you know, the language is English. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
how easy it was to start losing it right away when I wasn't in the
Mm-hmm.
country, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And even now, like now that I'm living in the Netherlands and like now I'm learning Dutch and I'm not using really Spanish as much anymore. Like
Mm-hmm.
my point though is like the biggest struggle has been like when I'm not anymore in like in a Spanish speaking country, like finding creative ways to continue to either like try to stay at the same level that you reach at some point or
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
try to improve. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like for like I really appreciate the feedback that you've given me, but I feel like, you know, I kind of got to a certain level in Spanish and just never really went too far past that. But
Mm-hmm.
nonetheless, like, you know, as I said, like I had to find creative ways to like continue to try to keep it up and practice and learn. It's like for me, it's been using italki, which I've seen, you know, you have videos
Mm-hmm.
doing.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool to see. I have a professor from Colombia that's like my guy on there. So he's like my friend now, not even my teacher anymore. And like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've been talking with him since 2018. I just like anytime I feel like, you know, I'm in a slump or like I haven't practiced as much as I should, I go straight to italki and like sign up for
Mm-hmm.
like I try to put,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like that
Yep.
like forward to myself, like you gotta keep practicing.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, I'm a huge fan of a lot of like Spanish music, or I
Mm-hmm.
don't say like music like with Spanish in, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that also helps keep me in the rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the videos, that's why, you know, came across your channel, like, you know, looking for inspiration, you know, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's just getting stimulated in all these kinds of ways as best as possible. Reading articles, you know, like looking up like things that you're interested in, but
Mm-hmm.
like looking at it in Spanish. Like those are kind of different things I've been doing in the past years.
Mm-hmm.
I would and ideally, you know, improve my level of Spanish. Does that make sense? I thought I was like
No,
all
it
over the
makes
place.
no, it makes a lot of sense. 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 And so, from what I take from that is something that I agree with 100%. Is that you have to stay consistent. It's like literally like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. It atrophies eventually. So I agree with that 100%. And I even noticed that for myself. If I go, because I'm at a point now where I really don't study Spanish as often as I should or consume as much as I should. I still passively, use it, but not as often as I should. And I notice sometimes I'm like, you never used to make that mistake, and you're making it now because you're not being as consistent as you once were with the language. It's literally that part of your brain atrophies if you're not using it. So,
And it's frustrating, you know, once you reach a certain level and like when you start making mistakes that people
mm-hmm.
are making, it's like, come on,
Yep.
man, I know.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you got to keep it real with yourself. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna go on this journey to learn this language, or just learn another language in general, or just anything, like learn anything, like
Yep.
it's gonna take effort. It's gonna take consistency,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And there's no shortcut to it. And that's
Agreed.
something. That's a mindset I had to get out of. I always like to try to see like, all right, is there like some like secret magic trick that's
Right.
like, you know what I mean, like propel my Spanish
Right.
or whatever. But no, the reality is that you got to spend that time, you got to spend those hours like reading, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like speaking out loud, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations where like you're sounding like a little kid while you speak, but it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. That's the only
Yeah.
way you're
Yeah.
gonna go, you know, like so
Yeah.
yeah, those kind of things for sure.
Okay, perfect. And so to close the video, Sam, do you have what could you tell us? Again, we said we can't control the future, but if you had to guess in a couple of years, what's the plan? Would you see yourself staying in the Netherlands? Do you see yourself, again, we don't have control of our lives, but just in the short term, not the long term, what do you see for yourself moving forward, just with life, with languages? Do you consider yourself a polyglot? Will you consider yourself a polyglot eventually if you end up moving to France? Who knows? With your life story, moving to different countries every 3 years. So what do you see? What do you see for yourself coming up?
Oh yeah, great question. I don't want to make this like a whole plug or anything, but you know,
No, please.
the whole YouTube thing and everything, and
Hmm.
you know, it ran from like this feeling of, oh, I've had these life experiences. Like I feel really fortunate for them. It's really dope. But
Hmm.
I want to do something with this. You know, I want to like in some way inspire others and like,
Hmm.
you know, show people different places, parts of the world, and like, you know, open up people's minds of like what's possible, what they could do in their life. You know, what I talked about earlier, like writing your own book and like
Hmm.
if life could be like a vessel for that, then I would love for that to be the case, especially for people that could be friendly, like, you know, look like us, like,
Yeah,
you know,
fair
black
point.
kids in the US that would never have imagined, like they don't even know what a passport is, you know, or
Hmm.
like think about having these kind of experiences, like.
Yeah.
So I wanted to like try to figure out some way to like have a platform to do this, you know. So long story short, now like I've been doing this YouTube channel called Exploring the Foreign, and through
Hmm.
that, like trying to achieve is just once again like highlighting different cultures and just different experiences that I'm having personally, or
Hmm.
like people that I personally, like highlighting their stories to try to like connect with people all over the world. So that could show in many different forms. Like I could do a video talking about learning Spanish. I could do a video like walking around the Netherlands, like speaking Dutch, and or like eventually I want to get to a point where I'm sitting like just setting up 2 seats in different public spaces around the world and just inviting strangers on to come and talk about a specific topic for the day.
That'd be
And so that,
amazing.
like this kind of could be like the one-stop stop for people coming and like just wanting to learn about the world, or just like just be inspired to like break out of their comfort zone. So I see myself going forward with that to answer your question. Like that's something that's really like heavy on my heart. Like these next years, I hope to like stay consistent and like really branch out with that. And yeah, I mean beyond that, yeah, hard to say. Hopefully take some more dancing classes. And improve some of my salsa skills. Improve my Dutch. That's definitely something I want to continue to get better at. And yeah, outside of that, man, yeah, we'll see where life brings me.
No, I got you. And what you mentioned is very important. I'll give you a small little story, and then we'll close. Maybe 6 months ago, I got a comment from a 17, 18-year-old kid, I think, like a rough neighborhood, I think in Miami. And he was saying like, man, you've motivated me to learn Spanish and other languages also. And I'm like, I know you told me like you're like a YouTuber, but I don't consider myself a regular guy. So I literally clicked on his channel, and like I clicked on his channel and subscribed. And because his first video was just him practicing Spanish and I think another language. And then I saw maybe like 5 months later, he had decided to leave Miami, do a study abroad program, a university degree in France or something. And I was like, this is literally insane. Like what you're mentioning about the inspiration and stuff, it's crazy to see that just from uploading some videos and putting time into, creating valuable content, you can really impact lives. So I definitely recommend you go forward with that. I'm on a super small scale and I already see a little minor impact. So I definitely think you'd be even better resource than I am, honestly, with time. So keep it up, please.
No, I mean, but that's what it's about, though, right? In the sense of like, it's not like we're trying to like highlight ourselves or like, hey, look at me, I speak Spanish, or
Right.
it's like sharing this with the world for inspiration. Like sometimes all someone needs just that trigger of seeing somebody else do it. I a lot of times in my life where like
Same.
saw someone else was like, oh, I could do this.
Same.
Like yeah, and so yeah, hopefully, and like I said, just through time and like dedication to this, like I'm able to have that effect. And like I said, you've already I keep giving you praise, but I really mean it, man. Like
Appreciate it.
I literally when I first came across your channel, I saw like the first video where like you were just in a room just speaking like saying some like random sentences, but like all of you started like, within a year, like seeing how you speak, man. Like it's amazing, man. It's really like inspiring me to be like, I got to go back harder on this. Like this guy's killing it. Like I'm trying to be like you, man.
Oh man, I appreciate it, Sam, and thank you honestly for reaching out to me. And I'm glad we were able to get this interview up. I think this will be very, very valuable for the people that are going to watch it. So appreciate it again, and que tengas un buen día.
Gracias, hermano. Fue un placer hablar contigo y gracias por todo.
Chao.